Hi everybody. Today I am answering the question how to avoid resenting a spouse, elderly parents, or life situations, what to do when being a caregiver changes who you are, changes your life, and how do we deal with this? I'm Pamela D Wilson. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. On there, a lot of hope, help, and support for caregivers of all ages and aging adults. So let's put some context into the situation. You had a great marriage and all of a sudden the health of your spouse changes. And all of those things that you enjoyed doing together are no longer possible. They're just off the table. How do you avoid resenting your sick spouse or your disabled spouse? Let's say that you are a young or a middle-aged adult. All of a sudden, one or both of your elderly parents got sick. You gave up your career, your friends, your activities, the love of your life. You moved across country and you thought this would be for 6 months. But it's now 2 years, 3 years, 5 years later. And you feel like your life is in cold storage and you can't decide whether to stay and take care of your parents or get on with your life. And you're thinking, if I get on with my life, I'm going to feel really guilty. Well, what do you have to feel guilty about? Is how to avoid resenting a sick or disabled spouse or being stuck caring for parents. Is it more about us missing the past, what we call the good old days? Or is it more about feeling powerless to take a step forward or powerless about who we've become? Is our identity become this caregiver and we're not the person we were before caregiving? So if you're new to caregiving and you're just moving through this transitions in life can be really difficult because we're having to adjust everything that we do. And even though we volunteer to do this, we want to care for parents, we want to care for a spouse, we want to be this good person who does good things for other people. That doesn't mean it's not difficult. Any type of change, it can be really exciting or it can be dreadful. It all depends on how we think about the change up here and how we look at the change in our life. So where are you today in all of this resentful, missing the past, I don't know who I am, caregiving mix? Are you a caregiver who spends most of your waking hours doing or thinking about caregiving related activities? Have you rescheduled your whole life, your work, your family, your social life, your free time around being this caregiver, around this caregiving time clock? Are you constantly operating in crisis mode? Do you live in this mental torture of second guessing everything that you're doing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decisions? Why are my family members questioning me? Do you live in a toxic caregiving environment where your spouse or your parent don't appreciate you? Or are you a 24/7 caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's who has behaviors and there's really nothing that you can do about that except to adjust your behavior and the way that you respond to the situation? Are you missing out on your old life? Because as a caregiver, your old life is today living your life for everybody else in your life, everybody else's needs. You have sacrificed your life to the extent that you don't even know who you are anymore. If so, here's a few questions to ask yourself, a few thoughts to consider. Now, when I talk about caregiving and solving problems and figuring out what to do next, I always talk about going beyond the obvious, because sometimes what we think is the problem isn't the problem. Sometimes we have to go beyond the obvious to figure out why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. And this can take a bit of thinking time. So if you're busy all the time and you don't have time to think, then it's hard to get to this place where you can start asking yourself questions to figure out how to move forward. So if you think about this, missing the past, missing the good old days, can mean that you're spending so much time in the past that you're avoiding the present. Now, if you're a caregiver and you're in a stressful situation, you might want to avoid the present because it might just plain old suck. But think of this. If you're living in the past and you're avoiding the present, that also means that there's no room for the future to come in. You're avoiding future opportunities and things that could be really good that are just right here that you can't get to because you're here and you're back here. So think about this. Are the good old days really just a memory? Is it a memory of carefree times when you didn't have any worries, when you weren't a caregiver, before you had a demanding job and you got married and you had kids and now you have all these life responsibilities that are just piling up on top of each other? And then think of this. Were the good old days really that good, or were you experiencing the same struggles? There were just some bright spots or some times that were good mixed in with all of those struggles. When we think about it, the good old days are really our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings that we miss. And they may be good because of a time in our life. So, when you're in your early 20s, you may not have a lot of responsibility. You may be going to college, maybe spending a lot of time with friends. And today your life really has kind of flip-flopped and gone upside down. How many of you have moved away from your hometown and you go back and you see it as this small town frozen in time and you think, wow, how could I have lived here? Was it really this small when I lived here? That going back illustrates the perspective on how our lives change and how we view situations and experiences that we think were really good, but maybe they were good at the time, but today they don't fit what we need. And it's always easier when we're looking at our life to be comfortable with the past, to dream of what things were like a year ago or 2 years ago. Because in looking back, we know what happened, right? The future over here is something that we can't predict, and it's filled with all these uncertainties, and we don't know what to do, and we don't know if we should do A or B or C, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. So naturally, caregivers can wake up every day with this thought of dread, thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen today? Is it going to be worse than yesterday, or is it going to be better? We don't know. So that uncertainty about the future can keep us stuck where we are today. So what do we do about that? Well, the first thing is to stop blaming other people, okay? The situation that we are in today, we got ourselves here through our thoughts, our actions, and the decisions that we made. Even though they may have been influenced by the needs of other people, we still made the decision to be a caregiver. We accepted this choice. We made this choice. We did this thing. So if our choices got us here, what do you think moves us forward, or what do you think gets us out? It's our choices and how we think and the decisions that we make. If you're a caregiver and all you can think of is worry and all the stress, write it all down and then look at what you can do about it and what you can't do about it, things that you control versus things that you don't control. Take steps to identify actions that you can take about things that you control. You can control the time you spend in caregiving. While you may think you can't, you can. You can control how you spend your time, where you spend your time, where you put your mental time, where you put your physical time. You have a lot more control than you think, but you have to get that in your mind that you have control, that you have choices, that you can make choices. Also, make new friends, seek out new activities and opportunities. That will help open your mind to the fact that you have more choices and that there is a future. Because mourning the past doesn't do any good, and a lot of people who get stuck in caregiving think that tomorrow is going to be the same as today and next week will be the same. So if you can't imagine life getting better or imagine what that looks like or how you get there, you're not going to be able to make any changes today. You're going to keep dreaming about the good old days, which you're never going to get back to because life situations change. Look at how much life has changed in the past couple of years because of everything going on in the world. Those good old days are gone. Today happens to be the good old days. Tomorrow is another day. Yesterday was a good old day. Unless you start taking your time seriously and believe that tomorrow will be better and can be better and that you can make changes and survive without feeling totally guilty, you will get there. Apathy, hopelessness, helplessness, those are all feelings that are up here. We control our mind. Nobody else controls our mind. Living in the past all the time can mean that you're avoiding the present and you're missing out on the future. Too many people wait for the future to happen. The future is today compared to yesterday. Realize that your future is today and your future is tomorrow and it's next week and it's next month, and start changing things up so that you can become more satisfied with your life, so that you can start living every day and creating more good days instead of bad days with the passing of every day, of every hour. I'm Pamela D Wilson. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. On there, a lot of hope, help, and support for caregivers. There's a lot of information on my website, in my articles, in my library, in my blog, my caregiving podcast, my online courses. All of that information is there for you. But if you don't take the step to go to my website, if you don't take the step to investigate information, you're not going to be able to find your future. You won't be able to find a path forward. Take the step today. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you all again soon in another video.